Hi, welcome to Trust the Leaders podcast, a podcast of Smith, Gambrell, and Russell. I am Lee Watts, and I am here today with Tony Cochran, a partner here at Smith, Gambrell, and Russell. Tony is a partner in our white-collar defense crime practice, and he has been practicing law for close to 44 years. He represents both individuals and businesses on a wide variety of complex matters. In addition to practicing in white-collar crime, he has also received several awards. He's been inducted into the American College of Trial Lawyers. He's consistently listed as being one of the top 10 attorneys in Georgia by Super Lawyers, and he's also listed as one of our best lawyers in America. But today, we are here to talk to Tony about another type of practice, and that is his practice of yoga. We know that this is a stressful time, and it's also an industry where there is a high level of stress in the legal industry. So we thought this would be an excellent topic to bring to our audience, bring to our firm, and open up a discussion about how to relieve stress and how to just manage the pressures of the legal industry. So, Tony, thank you for agreeing to talk with us today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Lee. It's nice to be here.
Great. So, Tony, tell us a little bit about when did you first begin practicing yoga?
It was about 20 years ago. I was a member at a health club, and they advertised a yoga class that night. I had read a great deal about yoga and thought, actually on a lark, that I would try the class. And as it turned out, I took the class, thoroughly enjoyed it, and started becoming a regular, and then it took off from there. So about
Great.
20 years.
Okay, and you've been pretty consistent for those 20 years?
Very consistent. When I first started, I was taking one class one day a week. That quickly grew to 2 classes a week, which then grew to taking 3 classes a week. And then after I joined a yoga studio rather than a health club, so that I was getting a pure form of yoga, I slowly started to move into teaching and have actually taught yoga for probably the last 18 and a half years.
Wow. So, Tony, I have to ask because I've worked in the legal industry, law firms, for close to 20 years, and time is also always an issue. How did you manage to make the time to really put forth the effort to be, nearly an expert in yoga?
Well, now my classes are built around my law practice. I have, before the pandemic, I was teaching 2 classes each week at 6:30 a.m. for 45 minutes. And then on those same days, I would teach a second class in the evening at 6:40. So in between, I would practice law. The other classes, the other 3 classes that I taught, actually the other 4 classes I taught were on the weekend. I had one on Friday night after work, which is my most aggressive, physically demanding class, and then one on Saturday morning, and then 2 on Sunday, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. So I built the entire practice of yoga around my law practice so that I could do both of them and maintain both of them full time.
Wow, that's very impressive. So that means you must manage your time pretty well. So that's great. So tell me, how has just the practice of yoga benefited you both mentally and physically?
Well, physically, I have a great range of motion now. I can do things in terms of bending and stretching that if you'd have asked me 20 years ago, I would have laughed and said there's no way I could do that. So my range of motion and my flexibility is probably as good as it's ever been in my entire life. The aggressive form that I do on Friday nights is part of my aerobic exercise. I also try to swim, at least I did before the pandemic. And so it's helped me there with aerobically, with my range of motion. And then actually, in terms of my health, over the course of the last 10 years, I've noticed that my blood pressure has gone from about 120/80 to now it's consistently about 110/70. So it's helped with that. And then probably the most beneficial part of it is it just helps tremendously dealing with the stress of being a trial lawyer. That's probably the greatest benefit for me.
Yes. So I really did want to pick up on the stress factor, the stress release factor that yoga can provide, especially as you mentioned, being a trial lawyer. So as we discussed at the top of this program, we are in the middle of a pandemic. So how has your practice changed during this time? Has it increased, decreased? Have you found people more interested in it? I think you've mentioned that you even do one with your family.
Yes. What has happened is the gymnasium or the church where I teach has now gone to online classes, and I have 3 of those that I teach each week. And then I have a group, my Friday night group, that does the more aggressive. I've been doing that on my own through Zoom. And then I do a class every late afternoon with my daughter and granddaughter who are in Seattle, and they connect on FaceTime. And we do that every afternoon during the week. It's actually part of my granddaughter's physical education of her school. My daughter homeschools her now during the day, and since they are 3 hours behind us, the yoga class we do is in the afternoon, Seattle time, about 3:30. So now I'm actually doing it 7 days a week, where before I was only doing it 5 days a week. So I'm probably doing a little bit more now than I was before the pandemic.
Wow. So let's say there is an attorney out there listening, maybe let's say over 50. It's never too late to learn yoga, correct?
Correct. I started when I was 50. So
right.
One of the benefits is it's kept me younger.
Right. And then again, relieving that stress. Now, again, because time is often an issue, again, we're talking to a possible attorney out there, someone who has really long days, often in the office. Are there things that you can do relatively simply and easily to start incorporating yoga into your life if you're at the office most of the day? It sounds like there's virtual ways to take up yoga as well.
There are. For example, the classes that I've been doing online for the church, we've recorded a couple of those and they're available. The nice thing is you can just do it once or twice a week. You don't have to do it as often as I do. Do it once or twice a week. You can get classes that are everywhere from 45 minutes to an hour, typically an hour. Some classes will be an hour and a half. So you always need to find out the length of the class before you begin. And probably the most important thing is to find about the style of yoga and the instructor, because you have everything from a restorative, very calm, non-challenging physically form of yoga where you can stretch, all the way to the classes that I teach on Friday night, which is a form of yoga called Ashtanga, more frequently referred to in the United States as power yoga, which will take anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half, and it's very aerobic. So you need to find out in between those two extremes what kind of yoga it is, if someone were looking to get started.
Right. And so I know that we've talked about this offline. We were talking about this as you are writing an article overall about balance and calm. And we know that yoga is obviously a big part of that. What are some, and I know we weren't necessarily prepared to talk about this in a lot of detail, but I know a lot of the other things that we've discussed with just the changes through the pandemic and adjusting and having that balance in our lives is also just getting used to the new technology that has suddenly been at the forefront of everyone's lives right now. So I would imagine that you were you already pretty up to date on technology before all of this?
Well, no, yes and no. To be honest, since this has all hit, I have discovered that being a Luddite is not an option, and I now have an extra 24-inch monitor at home, so that combined with my laptop, I can duplicate what's in the office, and I've now got a printer and a scanner and a fax machine. So under the circumstances, I'm getting quite an education there. So that adds to the stress. But on the other hand, one of the things about yoga that is sort of apropos here, you learn from the yoga that if you're patient, that if you keep doing the same thing, the same poses repetitively over time, you cannot expect instant results. But if you're patient, you can dramatically improve, for example, your range of motion. Dealing with all these electronics, you learn you have to be patient. You have to try, and when you fail, try again until you finally work your way through it.
I love that. I love that analogy. That's awesome. And I've had that experience in yoga. I'm expecting instant results, but it does take a lot of patience to just get it right. So I want to talk a little bit about just some advice that you would give maybe a second, third year attorney, and they are in a law firm or a situation where there's a lot of stress going on. What are one or two pieces of advice you would give a young new attorney?
One thing that I think is very important is whether it's yoga or tennis or bicycling or running, whatever it is, we all need to be able to get out and get some exercise and have some sort of a release of the energy and get yourself out of the office.
Yes.
Get out and get some balance in your life. I mean, if it's nothing more than taking a walk 2 or 3 times a week and get out of the office, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to get that physical exercise for your health, both physically and mentally. And it doesn't necessarily have to be yoga. There are all kinds of activities today that young people can engage in, and they just need to find what they enjoy and then do it. Make the effort.
Yeah, make the effort and make the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't become a couch potato, and don't spend, and this is true not only for the younger lawyers, but for all of us. We really need to watch our screen time on our iPhones and our laptops, particularly now with the coronavirus. I mean, you sit there and you get addicted to these devices, and you really need to break that. You need to get outside and do something else just to let your mind clear.
Right. Absolutely. Well, this has been really helpful and insightful. How can listeners reach you either for advice or assistance on a legal issue, or if they would like to join one of your classes.
Just email me at acochran at sgrlaw.com. Anthony Cochran, that's Cochran, ACOCHRAN at sgrlaw.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tony. This has been great. And I am committing to starting or continuing or restarting yoga again. So thank you so much for all of this.
Thank you very much, Lee. I appreciate the time.